Welcome to the Franchise Woman Podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zorkel Profiles, along with my co-host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Tracy Kawa. Our special guest today is Dawn Abbamondi. She's a director of brand development and marketing at SMB Franchise Advisors. Dawn brings with her extensive retail and franchising experience in the coffee, food, convenience, gift, and floral industries. Working with SMB's franchisor clients, Dawn leads the areas of marketing, social media, public relations, web development, and lead generation, as well as contributing to organization and operations process development. In over 20 years in the franchise industry, Dawn has managed several brand acquisitions for expansion into new markets, which involved brand integration and re-imaging. She has been a category buyer managing over 20 million in margin revenues and has led comprehensive marketing strategies for systems from 35 units all the way up to 1,000 units. Dawn, we're so delighted that you decided to join us. Thank you for coming on board.
Thank you for having me today. I really am happy to be here.
Yeah, I loved hearing about all of that extensive, delicious marketing know-how. That was pretty amazing. But first, I'd like to hear a little bit about this foundation, this wonderful close-knit family that you have, and growing up, and how that impacted this confident business builder that you are today.
Thank you, Tracy. I am one of 4 children. My parents both, spent their time raising us together. My dad worked during the day. My mom was a nurse and worked at night, so that there was always somebody home with us. And my dad had his own business, so for a long time I worked with him out in the field. And I took care of my younger siblings when needed. Not to say that I didn't go and have fun on my own, but I think that translated easily to me when I had my children. Although I did have a huge amount of help from family. My in-laws lived with us for 16 years when my children were very little. So I never had to worry about somebody, didn't have to worry where they were, when 2001 came around and there were daycare centers in the area where I lived in New York who didn't have a family member to come and pick them up. I didn't have that worry ever, ever, ever. But you learn how to do so many different things by being around your family and watching them do their work, the sacrifices that they made. And I was always told by my grandparents, both my grandmothers on both sides, you could do anything you want. You never, ever have to settle for doing something you don't want to be. My mom told me not to be a nurse. If you want to be a doctor, be a doctor. I chose instead to be an engineer. And I wanted to, after crawling around in basements with my dad, I thought there's a better way to build a house. And then I became an engineer. So, here I am today, not doing engineering, but hopefully helping franchisors build foundations for future success.
Yeah. It's really interesting because this foundation that you have with a loving, supportive, connected family, I'm envious. I mean, bottom line, I'm envious. I didn't have that, right? And I really do believe with a solid foundation like that, we can have, not only greater relationships, but greater success, because they instilled within you that you were loved and that you were capable, and voila, here you go. But I do find it interesting because you're now in marketing, but you had an inclination towards engineering and went that direction. So tell us a little bit about how that transition was made.
So one of the things you read in my bio is about brand acquisitions, and I was the project manager doing that work and worked really closely with the marketing team. at the retail company where I was, we had, a large, large brand in the petroleum industry. And, it was very budget focused. It was very, get the signs up on the street. And for me, it was more about hearing the marketing side of the company talk about what new products we were introducing to these literally into the new communities. And there was a lot of value in what the marketing team had put together. There was a lot of gross margin dollars for the operators. That was, a huge reason why we were bringing those new stores online. And so through my work with the marketing team, I earned their trust. I understood exactly why they wanted to do, why it mattered that we put this sign in this store and why we had to get approval from permitting and engineering approval. And so, at the end of these projects, a position became available and it was in the marketing department. And by that point, I already knew that I was having my second child, but I applied for the job anyway and was offered the opportunity. And the marketing team welcomed me with open arms because I had supported them and been an advocate for them and fought for things that they really wanted. And the budget was there for it. So it really they just needed somebody to help the rest of the company see the value. And so they let me come in. So that job I loved, but then I went out on maternity leave. And when I came back, I was tapped on the shoulder to be the coffee buyer. And I was a fish out of water. I didn't know, I knew the foundation of what it was. I knew the value. We had a private label coffee company within the brand. And I really, really grew to love that position. But it was a learning curve, after coming back and having a baby. And so, luckily, people just said, we trust you. We know that you know what you're doing, and we're going to let you run with this. And we made a lot of money for franchisees and for the company by introducing that product line and that private label brand. So I think that may have answered your question.
Yeah, it did. It did. Now, you've mentioned babies a couple of times. Tell us more about your babies, because you had to work your career around these babies. How did you do that?
Great help from family. My husband is hugely supportive. 3 children, we spaced them out because I was working through the whole time. So they're 3 years apart. And, we just tried to give them the flexibility and the freedom to do what they could do best. We're not really like helicopter parents, and we let them fall. I was allowed to fall down and told I could get up and do it better. We learned early, not so early on with my son, that he had dyslexia, and immediately tried to pursue options for him. He has a really high intelligence factor, and people told us, don't worry about it, he'll guess accurately. And I said, well, he's watching a lot of video games and he thinks he might want to be a nuclear physicist. I'd really like him to be able to read what he is reading and not guessing inaccurately at those words. And then when our youngest daughter was in first grade, we noticed immediately she was struggling in similar ways, but differently. And so we had them tested. We hired a tutor. We spent the money to make sure that they could learn around that. And, one of the things that I found is that other parents would secretly tell me, where did you get that tutor? How did you find out about them? And so I just started sharing through my PTO and leadership within the community of, my kids aren't perfect. Your kids aren't perfect. Nobody's kids are perfect. We aren't. We all have to learn and help each other. And it makes me sad that there aren't parents out there, and empathy for people who didn't have that growing up. And so one of the things in my role in franchising and Women's Franchise Committee and the Women's Franchise Network, I just want to help people see their value and what they contribute, because if I can lend that to people who aren't in my family and create a better relationship with them through that connection and saying, I see you, I think you're doing amazing. And, I just think everybody brings so much to the table that they need to be recognized for that. So I try. I don't know how well I do it all the time, but that parenting experience I try to bring forward into my professional career.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm wondering, because this is a women's franchise podcast, I'm wondering what you would say to all those women out there who may want to get into franchising, but they have children with special needs at home, or, just various family concerns. How do you balance both? What would you say?
I think there's huge opportunity for women, for parents, for mothers who have that challenge at home. Franchising has a lot of flexibility versus a corporate job. I think that there are so many different industries within franchising. Not only can you find the investment level that is a good fit for your budget, do you have $100,000? Do you have $1 million to invest? And loans certainly come into play. What do you like to do? Certainly, I don't want somebody to leave a corporate job and then start a franchise doing something they don't like to do. You even said this is passion and profits combining. So, find what you love to do. The money will follow, and it could be something that is a Monday through Friday after school enrichment program. I mean, not to get too specific, but there are, certainly there are 24/7, 365 days a year franchise brands out there, but you don't have to choose that. And so, I would also recommend bringing on team. You can't do it all on your own. And so if you are the franchise owner, turn over the day-to-day responsibilities to a trusted team who can do what they need to do. Your time as the owner is more valuable. Reaching out to the community, managing that PR, that relationship with the community, engaging with customers, clients, other professionals that can refer you business, you can refer business to them. I think it's very collaborative from that perspective. So, there's a lot of flexibility for people. And if they just trust themselves and get out of that, I can't do it, or I have a fear because I might have to leave at 3:00 because I have to take my child to the tutor, to wherever, the doctor, for an allergy shot, or, to go get their brace refitted because they fell down and it needs to be adjusted. There's a lot of flexibility in franchising. And I think it can work.
It can definitely work. What great advice. Thanks, Dawn, because you're absolutely right. And women do really well in franchising. They're kind of wired for it. So look, you'll find something that's a good fit
Absolutely.
with the stage of life you are with your children and your significant others and family, etc. I was thinking back to this idea of this transition that you made from engineering to marketing. And when I think of marketing, I think of all the logistical things, the web development, but really when you boil it down, it's storytelling, right? Isn't it that kind of what it is? Can you elaborate a little bit on this idea of storytelling, and more importantly, elaborate on how we go about pulling those stories out?
I love that. Yeah, I always recommend to my clients in sharing their brand that they need to share their story. How did they get involved? How did they open the business? How did they decide to franchise? Why did they decide to franchise? And there are various reasons. I think there are, a variety of unique reasons why franchise brands exist. And that helps the franchise owners who are considering getting into a business to learn about the brand and make sure that it is a good connection and a good fit. If it's all about the money, that's okay. It can be all about the money, but there are people who are looking to really love what they do and make a difference. And, in retail marketing, it used to be all about signage, right? This was before video. It was before social media. I've been in marketing a long time. But, we used to have a sign outside, and then we had another sign in the door, and then we had another sign on the end cap, and then there was a sign on the cooler door. And all of those messages were about getting somebody to make a purchase in a different way. right? It was, convincing them to choose something different than they would have normally. And now we have this opportunity for video. And you can hear directly from the franchise founder, the team that work with them, the franchisees who said, I got into this business because of Rebecca.
Mm-hmm.
And trusting her got me to follow this leader. And then they hear from other franchise owners who said, well, I had my job in finance, I hated it, or I was a lawyer, I didn't want to do it anymore. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. You know what I mean? I hear so many stories about people who just changed careers. So for me, I relate. I went from engineering. I thought I would become an architect, go back to grad school and help design buildings. And marketing was an outlet for me. Graphic design and creativity, and how do you present the brand with images, and then translating into web development, video, podcasts. I love podcasts. I love listening to people's stories. I listen into so many while I'm doing whatever, in between the boring work that you have to do. Work is work, right? I mean, we have to find our passion somewhere.
It is boring,
but some of it is boring work and repetitive. But one more email I have to read. But I think there's so much option. There's so many more options for people to be better communicators than ever. And, if we want to go back to talking about parenting, communication, it's hugely about communicating clearly and repeating yourself.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Curious, having worked with many franchisors, do they always know what their story is?
They don't.
I'm just thinking about that. I've been in this space, the franchise space, 30 years, and I've worked with hundreds of franchisors, and some know what their story is, the why, I guess. I don't know how to describe it, but others, it's the same message. We have the best training, we have great operational system, we're low investment, we're recession proof. It's the same message again and again. And when I say message, I'm saying bullet points, right? Rather than the story, because I will listen to a story. I think we're all inclined, from itty bitty children to old people. We love hearing a story, especially if it's well told. So I know that's a lot to ask. Do you think franchisors know their story? And if not, how do you get to it?
Excellent question. And in the last couple of years, I instituted a whole interview process when we start working with a new client, because I struggle to find those unique value propositions for a brand in my work with them, right? One of the things I have to do is I write website copy for them for their franchise development website. And to your point, we could say the same things about many, many brands, but then what is unique? And so sometimes I look at a brand, I say, wow, that's really different, because I've seen so many. I already know. But I want to hear from the founder or from the leadership team. And if they don't know, we talk about it and we try to pull out from them. I think sometimes people just want to, or they're prompted to just tell that elevator pitch. So we ask them what that is, right? We want to educate franchisees. When you're talking about the brand, they don't know it. They haven't grown up with it. They haven't developed it for the last 5 years. So they need to be educated. How do I pitch this? Instead of, I own a business, right? You have to tell that story. So when working with the founders, we interview them. We ask them questions. We say, why did you get into this? Oh, people asked us if we were a franchise. Okay, well, what makes you different? And so we just keep digging until we find something that stands out. And we don't always find it at the first conversation. But to your point, being able to have them tell their story in a 2-minute video, a 3-minute video, we get there eventually. And we're trying to coach them about how to be different. Because there's a lot of noise in the industry. And, we could, we've think about all of the burger brands, the better burger brands. They're all different, even though it's a burger, but there's a reason why we go to one brand over another. it could be about the way it tastes, but probably it's about something else.
Somehow that burger strikes an emotion.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Right, right. Yeah, you've seen a lot of changes, right? As a marketer, first there was, maybe written advertisements or TV and radio, and then it evolved with social media and all this digital marketing. Dawn, what do you think is the future of marketing? I know it's like a loaded question, but
It is.
future.
Innovation, every time there's something new. I mean, I'm older than the millennials, or, I'm older in marketing, right? 30 years in marketing. I am fascinated by the new channels that come out.
Mm.
When TikTok came out, the kids were on it, right? My kids were on it. And I was like, oh, I don't need to be there. But it's so engaging and it's entertaining. And so I don't know what's next. I wish I did. I could retire from what I do if I could name the next big thing. But I do think it will be something that is interactive in some way and probably involve video. I don't know if it's AI,
Yeah.
which makes me a little bit nervous, but being able to say whether or not there's a human on the other side of the video screen. But maybe, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. We'd be billionaires.
Right.
To figure it out. But
we figured it out on this podcast.
Yeah, but in your business, you do have to be one step ahead, one step ahead, one step ahead. So you have to have your eye out for that.
Right.
You know,
I have pushed people who are not comfortable in front of the camera to be in front of the camera.
Right.
Even though they're like, no, don't take a picture of me. Take a picture of my team. Take a picture of my store. Take a picture of my van. I'm like, that's boring. You are the different component of that. And all of the humans, all of the franchise owners who will follow you want to see something different.
No, I look at that from a psychological perspective too. You can tell so much about a person from their tone of voice and their gestures, and you can feel if they're passionate and transparent and honest. So on a video, especially of a founder or a concept originator, to see that I think is important. And if they have a quirky side of them, that comes out too, which endears us to them, right? So I think the videos are very, very important. I as I'm thinking about this again, it comes down to me about relationship, right? And about good communication. And your job as a marketer is to pull that out of them, is to pull it out of them. Now, I know you're good at it. That's a known, right? We know you're good at it. But give us some tips. I mean, are you just a natural where you can sit down on a bar stool and start having a conversation with someone about whatever? Or how do you pull it out? There's no way you can do that in 3 minutes. How do you pull it out? What allows them to start to reveal themselves, which then begins to reveal their story?
I don't know how it happened. I really don't. Maybe it's
Hard.
because I was in a busy household growing up. The only thing I know is that if I sit down in a restaurant by myself, in a bar, on a plane, I can read, I can occupy myself, I can pull out the laptop, I can do something else. I would rather talk to a person. And so, whether it's just, oh, well, where do you live? Or are you traveling home? I start with simple things. I mean, conversation starters, it's always, are you going home, or are you going on vacation? Or are you traveling for work? That's usually what I start with.
Mhm.
And then it goes from there. If they're going home to where I'm traveling, I want to know about their place, where they live. What's why do they love living there? Did they grow up there, or did they move with their parents or their spouse, or for work or college? There's so many different things that I would just love to learn about people. I can't stop asking questions. I'm in sales, for me, I think the point of having the founder videos is tell the founder story, get it out there, because everybody needs to hear your story. But then that gives the opportunity to the development team, the founder, the sales leadership to learn about that franchisee. And so it's the hardest thing to figure out is whether or not they're going to be a good fit with the brand.
Right.
Right. And that's what you do all the time. You are helping them figure out psychologically, mentally, background, experience, whatever, are they going to be a good fit for the franchisor? And so if you get all of that factual information out about the brand to start, it leaves you with the flexibility of time. Like, I don't want to talk about the brand that I work for all the time. I want to learn about them. I want to learn about somebody else. And so I'm not saying that we don't need somebody on our team to do that. Sales is very important and being able to share what we do. I love to learn about new people and get to know them and develop new friendships.
Relationships, insatiable curiosity,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
approachability.
It can get me in trouble, right? But curiosity killed the cat. But until somebody tells me to stop asking questions, I may keep asking.
It also sounds like it's about the people behind the brand. The brand sometimes is, it's the mask or it's the brand of the product or service, but what's that real story? The blood, sweat, and tears of that founder who created this business. Why did they create that product? Why did they create that service? And it sounds like your insatiable curiosity is with the people to get them to reveal what that story is that launched the brand.
Yeah. I mean, coffee, I love coffee. I loved being a coffee buyer. I would be a really bad coffee bar owner. I am not a morning person. I need coffee. But many coffees taste similar, right? The roast is different, but it's how do you feel when you walk into that coffee shop? When you drink the cup of coffee? I mean, certainly there's that element of the caffeine and the hot and the sweet and whatever it is, but it is why did they do it? Was it because they left corporate America and they needed to make the money to pay their mortgage and raise their kids and put them through college? Or was it because they took over from their parents and they really felt that they owed it to their parents to carry on their legacy? And maybe the second generation children who take over that brand change it a little bit to adapt. It's fascinating. I just love being in this industry, and it's always changing, which is what makes it so interesting to me to keep doing it. So
yeah. Well, before we get into a little more about SMB, it dawned on me. I think I've known Tracy for 8 years now, Tracy, and of course I know myself as a scientist. I have the similar insatiable curiosity you have, but I also seem to have this urgency in me to get to the point as fast as possible, whether I'm on the phone or whatever. I want to get to the heart of the matter. And Tracy, you're the same, right?
Yes, definitely. We're not going to sit and talk about the weather. We're definitely
it's
no
not,
weather. No weather.
It's not small talk.
Yeah.
So, but you have this relaxed demeanor and this approachability and this transparency that you have, that you seem to linger with those conversations, whether it's, an airport and somebody sitting next to you having a meal or whatever. You seem to linger and then just ask gentle questions where you get to that point, maybe not in 3 seconds flat, but you get there. And I applaud you for that, because I don't have that kind of patience. Small talk ability, right? So this is really a talent you have, Dawn. And I hope those of you that are listening are paying attention, because in my opinion, and you let me know, Dawn, what you're thinking, when we move into that more intimate space with people about their story, that's just what it is. It's intimate, right? And it builds a very solid foundation. And when we look at the importance of that, it's all about relationships. In the end, it's all about relationships, right? And how do we get there? By getting to know someone and then allowing them to get to know us.
Creating trust, and
Yeah.
that somebody isn't just asking questions in order to get something out of the relationship that is one-sided. That's why I like having the conversations. I think then it's a give and take. I'll share something, you share something, we bounce back and forth playing catch, right? And it's not always easy. I mean, there are definitely people who can't do that. And I do meander, right? I will hopefully eventually get back to my point. That is something that I have struggled with for years. My husband jokes about it. He goes, I know one day in the future that you are just going to finish a story that you started 30 years ago. And I will have to just go, oh, now it all makes sense. And so I am trying. I really am, but it's just my personality. I can't help it. And maybe it's not something I should change, but I do try to get to the point, so that people can learn from it, and move forward. But I don't know where I was going with that. I
No,
apologize.
you echoed kind of where Tracy and I were going with this. So the meandering, the
Mhm.
lingering, the insatiable curiosity allows you to get to that franchisee story, that franchisor story, and share it. So let's talk about SMB. What is SMB up to? Tell us a
Oh,
little bit
a
more.
lot. We're working with a large number of emerging brands right now in all different industries, home service, mobile concepts that are, service based in a van or a truck or a vehicle, restaurants, some professional services that are very interesting. And, it's always fascinating to me how a business can be franchised, right? It is about the process, it's about the training, it's about the support, but it's about the brand that creates that distinctive opportunity. So, we're working with a fractional CFO. I don't know anything about finance. I want to outsource that as fast as I can. When I owned my own business, I hired a bookkeeper, an accountant, and a finance person right away. It's not my forte. And so I see value in that. And it's very different. And there are lots of people who can take that experience and leverage it out. But we walk, our clients through the process from deciding to become a franchisor. And if they don't have a franchise attorney, we connect them with a few who they can then interview and get to know and create a relationship with that attorney. They're going to hopefully have a long-term relationship with that attorney over the next several years, working through the process to analyze competitive landscape, who might their franchise candidates be considering instead of them, whether it's in their industry or similar. And then, web sales, Federal Trade Commission, how do you disclose somebody? How do you work through leads? How do you make sure that they keep engaged with you? So you don't lose them and say, I have all these people and then they never call me back. How come they inquired on my website if they didn't want to call me back? And I think people are really nervous about going into business. So it's really about just staying in touch with them. And then we write their operations manuals. So, we are creating hopefully a long-term relationship with our clients. Not just getting to them to the point where they launch and they're legal and they're ready to sell, and onboard new franchise owners, but we love being a part of their brand for years to come, and then being able to answer their questions when they have, am I ready for my first franchise conference? I have 14 franchisees. Should we bring them all together?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all in a market they're pretty close. You don't have to make it into this elaborate show, but then, being able to work with a brand who says, you know what, we haven't updated our manual. We have all these changes. Some of it's on the portal, some of it's in print. We should redo this. So we're trying to address their needs and lend them the experience. Certainly COVID came out of nowhere and none of us had anything, right? We've been through 2001. We'd been through 2008 with the financial crisis. Nobody had dealt with the pandemic before. except, 100 years ago, but
Mhm.
they're not here to help us through that. So
Dawn,
we're just, yeah.
sorry. I was curious what some of the names of the brands are that you work with.
So we have 350 brands in our portfolio,
Oh my God.
actively
I
about
had no idea.
65. So Canine Resorts, luxury pet hotel, fitness machine technicians, they repair equipment. We're working with a new brand that literally just became legal yesterday called Sonatica. They're a infrared spa in California. We work with Live Young Wellness Spa out of Texas. It's a Medi Spa. I don't do much with that, but I don't understand injectables, but I had to learn.
Yes.
Massage therapy, restaurants, Aliolio out of Texas. I'm sorry, Florida. Chorby is in Texas. Our website is not up to date. We try to keep it as up to date as possible, but brands that nobody's heard of yet.
Wow.
They will,
And then
though.
there's,
They
and then the ones that we did work with, Junk Luggers and Gym Guys and clean franchise brands, lapels, Sobol. I don't know if you've heard of Sobol. They're acai bowls. Birthday Pack, we were sad to see them leave the franchising space during the pandemic, but when every restaurant that they were working with was closed, nobody was going in with a gift card to enjoy a birthday dinner out. So we're sad to see brands that we think were innovative leave franchising because of the impact of what happened in the last couple of years. But thrilled to continue to work with their team who are still in franchising in various ways. And we'll see new things, I think, out of leaders who were with brands that didn't make it. I think they're always going to come back and innovate and create new opportunities.
I agree, Dawn. I think if someone is an inventor, an idea person, a concept originator, yes, things happen and does take us sideways, but they always come back. They're wired to do just that.
They are.
Great, ladies, we are coming up on the hour, so I want to make sure that if folks want to learn more about SMB, if you're someone considering creating a franchise, and you want to talk to Dawn and team, how they get hold of you. If you're a prospective franchisee, give us some information how a prospective franchisee can learn about these 300 plus franchise. So how do we get hold of you, Dawn?
Email is great. Dawn at smbfranchising.com. I am on LinkedIn, Abbamondi. It looks harder to say than it is. But I'm on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook, SMB Franchise Advisors. And they can also, just reach out via text or phone call, 215-370-7998.
And we'll make sure to put that on various social media sites as we get this video out. Tracy, you are always so good at wrapping things up. What are your final thoughts?
Oh, there was so much delicious stuff in this episode.
I know, I was thinking the same thing.
And thank you so much.
I took notes.
Nice. Thank you so much, first of all, for sharing your story with us. Your family, your history, your children. I think you're a wonderful mom. And, you're such an inspiration on balancing work and home and just trying to be the best at everything you can be. So I want to thank you for that. And my takeaway today really has to do with that relationship building element where it really does start with that small talk. Even though I don't like talking about the weather, it starts with that small talk, to that back and forth, to get people to open up just a little bit so that they feel comfortable with you, so that they can trust you. And I think that was the key word there. If they're trusting you, even the founder, of a franchise, if they're trusting you with their story, then you're relaying that story to the public. The public feels like, wow, I have a glimpse and insight into this person's life. And there's that rapport built right there. And I think that it sounds like a large part of what you're responsible for. It's a very interesting perspective. I want to go to the nearest airport and sit down with
Practice.
coffee and start with some small talk. So I definitely want to try that. But thank you for all that fantastic insight.
Yeah.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for making this conversation easy. Really, both of you have been truly wonderful to talk to today. And I'm glad to get to know both of you just a little bit.
Yeah, we love having you. If you're open to it, we'll invite you back when we do some special events, because this topic of telling the story, but to get to that story, you have to build a relationship, and I think is powerful. And I'd like to maybe do a panel discussion on that and have you back with a couple of others, if you're open to it.
Happy to do so. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening in to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships are forged. We'll see you next week for another edition.